Like
It's,
Gladius. Oh, wait, here we are.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Cool.
Brilliant.
Hello, everyone.
So, oh yeah.
Oh, we don't have to
Hi.
have a specific
Yeah,
intro.
yeah,
Hello.
exactly. Hi, humans. I want to talk about basically relationships and beliefs and the role that our imagination, our definitions, our belief systems play into masculine and feminine dynamics. And I think that there's a whole new paradigm of relationship possibility that emerges when we strip away beliefs and we strip away meaning from the way that we perceive sex, the way that we perceive love, the way that we perceive romance, the way that we perceive ourselves, and the way that we perceive partnership. All of these things are highly relevant. And what excites you to talk about, Jackson?
I am the same, feel the same. That my intention, knowing that it can evolve in real time, is that really what we talked about it before, which is just the excitement to actually have a conversation about the topic of gender, sex, relationships, polarity, masculine, feminine, partnership, all of those things. I believe from a perspective and from a model that is actually going to be quite novel and new to anyone who listens to this. And I really feel like my belief is that there is a high potential for a substantially increased amount of pleasure, happiness, and love as we define them from the perspectives that we may share today. And that's why I'm really excited about it. It's something I've wanted to talk about for a long time, actually. And so um, I kind of have a thought of how we could like jump into it if you're open to me starting
That
off with that, which is
that's perfect. I was just going to ask you, what do you mean by that, and let that be the opener.
great.
Yeah,
Great.
yeah.
Well, the way I am thinking of things is that we can start with a couple like basic definitions,
Nice.
which is first, well, let me think. Yeah, the first one is, of course, the idea of what we call parts, which some people call things like the base idea is that as a human organism, there are multiple things going on in our present moment psychological experience that we may call it, oh, it's my inner child, or it's this part of me, or it's, oh, this one side of my personality. But the first is just this recognition that as human beings, it seems that most of us have the experience of different sides, different parts of ourselves at any given time. And then we also have sort of like a silent witnessing consciousness that observes all of it. And sometimes for some people seems to access some kind of deeper wisdom. So just I want to preface that, and we may use that term, this idea of parts. And the second definition that I want to bring is there's three total. The second one is the idea of needs, or what I call it desires. Some people call it needs. That's a belief. But it's basically what motivates parts of us in ourself to do things and to think certain ways and to form certain beliefs. And so if there's a part of me that in my life forms a belief, for example, that, this is what masculine looks like, or this is what a feminine woman looks like,
The way
there
to
can be
be
a part of
feminine is.
way
Yeah.
to be feminine is exactly the way masculine
Hmm.
is that there's some deeper desire usually or some need, quote unquote need, that this part of me is trying to meet for me when I formed that conclusion when I was whatever 6, 10, even 20, dating gurus, whatever it is. And so the first idea is parts. Second idea is just desires, that there are parts of us that are motivated by our desires to form certain things and to think certain ways. And so then the last idea, which I think is the most substantial, is the idea of meaning making, which is so potently simple. It's just that there is what is happening in the present moment that is coming in. I'm not going to get too metaphysical. I'm just going to say there is the input of our sensory experience through our eyes and our ears, our touch, our senses. And that's just what it is. And then there is the meaning that we give to that in our mind. And that this happens usually with language. And so the idea that if a cat walks into this, I'm actually not in a room. If a cat walked up to me right now, if my mind gave it the meaning it's going to attack me, That's a very different thing from the cat walking up. There's the meaning it's going to attack me, and there's the experience of the cat walking up. And those are two different things. Whether or not I'm correct in the meaning I'm giving is a conversation that can be had. But the most important component is just recognizing the difference between the sensory input and the meaning. So those three concepts, parts, desires, meaning, to me are pretty foundational for everything we're about to talk about. Curious if you'd like to comment or add anything else.
Yes, I want to add to the idea of meaning making and then provide a definition for definition and provide a definition for belief.
Great.
Because from my side, those are going to be really important definitions to understand as well. So when you say that the meaning that we create is actually a separate thing from the experience itself, there are reasons why we tend to create similar meaning for similar experiences. And in many cases, that spontaneous, automatic, unconscious creation of meaning is actually a result of a belief or a definition that we have in our consciousness. And so let's define what a belief is. There's a few different lenses that you can look at the idea of belief, and it'll start to make more and more sense. The one that most people are familiar with is the idea of a program. So the idea is that the program carries a specific intention, it carries code, and it just continuously executes that code again and again and again and again. And all programs actually require energy, i.e., computing power, in order to maintain. So instead of perceiving that a cat is approaching me, if we have a belief called cats aren't safe, I am not safe, the world's out to get me, the moment that that cat approaches, that's the automatic unconscious meaning that we're going to create in the moment because we have that program repeatedly hooking our attention and focusing it on that intention of I am not safe, the world's out to get me, cats are not safe. And so the belief is you can think of it, this is how I've started to think of it. A belief is almost like crystallized intent. So the belief is a crystallized intention that is now lodged in your it's lodged in your perceptive matrix and it's lodged in your somatic body through emotions and sensations. So that belief doesn't just make logical sense, it makes visual sense. It shapes the way you perceive. It makes emotional sense and it shapes the way that you feel in the moment in response to the objective
Let's take
outside
the
world.
belief cats are dangerous as the example. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to
So
have a feeling, the thing. Yeah.
yeah, so you see danger instead of a cute cat and you feel fear instead of love. That's what the belief is doing.
And my visual field might literally accentuate, sharpen, or amplify the claws and the teeth.
Right.
I even believe that we can have subtle visual distortions from
Hallucination, yeah.
things like this, where we could have like a very subtle, like I could project visually like a face of aggression or like anger on the cat's face that may
Mhm.
actually not even, he might just be chilling. There's why people, yeah,
Exactly. Exactly. Which is why you you and I have a sense of humor that I personally love.
me too.
And I find like super dark, tongue-in-cheek, like racist, sexist stuff, like the thing that you're not allowed to say, I find it funny. Um, and there's a very real component to like when someone has like a racist belief system, I think that it's likely true that they're subtly projecting ill intent and malicious traits and qualities onto that other race, and then that's what they perceive. So when they look in
Mm,
the eyes and they see the infinite love of the universe manifesting as a divine creator in front of them, that's not what they see. They don't see that. They see an
whatever,
n-word
whatever
who,
the thing
yeah,
is. Yeah.
right. So I want to dovetail that and just quickly provide a definition for, well, I want to give at least one more analogy, which is that the belief can be looked at as a spell. So a spell is just an intention that is fueled with energy. That's all a spell fundamentally is. And so the belief is a crystallized intention that's powered by the emotions and sensations in your body, that emotional energy. And when we live with an identity, a belief of I'm not good enough, it's like we're casting a spell on ourselves so that we're systematically entrained in our awareness and our attention to perpetually perceive the spell instead of the direct reality and the truth that's in front of us. And then a definition is just a belief. Every single letter of every single word of every single language is just a belief. And there's a useful distinction in categorizing certain beliefs as definitions because I call this color white on this mouse. Other people would call it off-white. There isn't actually a thing out there in the universe called white. That's just a definition. There's just what we call light reflecting sense data into our awareness that we compute and then interpret. So every single concept, every single word is ultimately just a definition. It's just a belief. It's just an agreement about what a experience, a symbol, or an amalgamation of sense data means.
Yeah.
That's all that a definition is. Going back into meaning making.
So I give into that. From that, I think of kind of bringing it full circle to gender and dating. I'll just kind of share an overarching thought I have, and
Mhm.
then we can break it open, which is that, does that sound good? I'm gonna kind
Yeah,
of like,
do it.
cool. I
Mhm.
just, I'll share like in my experience of life, going through, there's so many different coaches, dating philosophies, gurus, traditions, customs of what it looks like to be a man, a woman, a whatever. If you don't identify with that, whatever it is. And I think one of my original incentives for wanting to record this was that there was a part of me that would feel frustrated when I would see people like declaring things like they're just like these absolute truths without any evidence whatsoever. And I think some of like the most common, but it's pretty nuanced. But I think some of the most there's a seems to be an overarching common belief system in general dating world, even in people who are like in more like open-minded dating world, that there are these things that we call masculine and these things that this thing we call feminine, and that those are energies or emotions or experiences that have some sort of objective, like behavioral or natural form or pattern. And there's this idea that, divine masculine or divine feminine look a certain way, act a certain way, talk a certain way, are a certain way, or exist at all, to be clear. And there's this like it's pretty ubiquitous. And as I've continually deepened into for me, what is the wonderful world of understanding the difference between what happens and the meaning that we give it, it was undeniable to me that, well, okay, masculine, that's a word, it's an English word. There's other words in other cultures that have a similar type of thing. And the word, for any word, the word points to something, but the word isn't the same as the thing it's pointing to. It can't be. There's a Buddhist concept. They say the finger pointing at the moon isn't actually the moon. And if you're focused on the finger, you actually miss the moon completely because you're like, that's the moon. And you're totally like, you spend your whole life this way.
In a state
And
of confusion. Yeah.
literally, yeah, confusion. Yeah. And, we talked last night about the idea of labeling that I like the word labeling as well for meaning making of like concepts, which is like, imagine if everywhere you went in life, if this chair just had a little label, it said, little like sticker, it says chair. And then this has a little sticker that says tree. And then this has a little sticker that says hand. But like, we're recognizing that the label that we've stuck on that isn't the same as this thing right here. That's just the label. So we can
Right.
understand it. So we can talk about it.
Mhm.
And there's nothing wrong with the label. And what we talked about last night is like, I'm like, okay, so there's a couple things here when it comes to masculine, feminine, what those things are, what they look like. My initial thought that I'd like to share is just that we experience the phenomenon of sensations in our bodies and our desires and our intentions and the things that we see in the world. That's it. And from there, and we observe other people in our vision, and usually maybe sometimes with some touch and sound. And from there, we label things. And we may say, okay, there's this sensation in my body, and I have a penis. So I'm going to call, and then we give this. And it seems that in general, there's some pattern of other people who have one of these that seem to move or talk in a similar kind of way. And so this is masculine. And then same thing with feminine. Or there's a certain thing that we call, no, oh no, I have other sensations. And those ones are different than those ones. And they feel unique. And sometimes it's in different parts of my body. And so these ones we're going to call feminine. Now, like for me, before even getting into, we're not talking about the utility of it or not yet. That is a separate conversation, which we can also have in a moment. But right now, it's just recognizing the difference between these labels and what's actually happening. And even just that, you can just accept, just that acceptance starts for me to kind of just unravel a whole lot of the entire paradigm of traditional like dating polarity philosophy for me. Because what is true, as far as I can tell, my own perception, is that it sure seems that every single human body on this planet experiences a unique set of sensations in their body that are unique to them. And I am willing to accept that it seems there are some patterns. It does seem like there are some similar sensations between all people and between people who have a penis, and then similar sets of sensations to people who have a vagina. And there does seem to be some consistency to certain things that people experience. And so I want to make it clear that like my belief or intention isn't even to suggest there is no consistent, natural, whatever, but just to recognize that the label we give to that is 100% created in our mind. And I know there's like, I'm trying to like, there's the deeper point of why that's important. I'm actually curious what's live for you right now, because like we were talking about it last night, it was so crystal, and I know we're
Yeah.
gonna continue to sink deeper into it, but I'm curious what's alive for you right now, because I feel like you have something that's on your. Yeah.
First, I'm going to clarify my understanding of some of the concepts that you're talking about, which is that the the definition of the word is never the exact same thing as the thing that it's pointing to. So when we say that's a masculine man, first of all, if we just stripped away the words and looked at the being that's there, we would see that there's a being there. And that's all that's actually happening. And then we add a perceptive lens on top of that, and we define that being that's just being there as he is, as masculine
As
and
it
as
is.
man.
Yeah.
Right. And so the definition is never the thing itself. That it can point to a concept, which is why we have multiple words in different languages that all mean and intend something very similar or identical. But the so here's how you can visualize it. There's what actually is, then there's the concept that tries to describe it, and then there's the human being mouth sound masculine feminine that is trying to say the concept pointing to the thing. So the word, the definition is actually two layers removed from reality.
Yes. Yeah, we talked about that last night. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And so once that is, you could say, accepted, which is just as true as like the concept of laptop, right? Or MacBook. I have MacBook right here, MacBook Pro.
Yeah, what's ironic
That
and funny is that there's no such thing as a MacBook. In truth, there's just a
well,
computer that exists, and
yes,
even defining it as a computer is still a definition.
I'm
There
calling
just
it atoms.
is.
There's a phenomenon.
Yeah, there just is. And then what we define it to be, we say that thing is called a computer, and it's specifically a MacBook.
Yes. And it's two layers removed, specifically in the sense that what we said is there is both the concept of MacBook, which well, actually, this is not a good example. Let's say computer. There's the concept of
Mhm.
computer, which has many different linguistic labels.
The
There's
definition of which has changed
yeah,
drastically over the last 100 years. Yeah.
yeah. what I'm saying is like in Spanish, they have a different word for it. In English, they have a different word for it. In French, they have a different word for it. But everyone is pointing to the same concept
Mhm.
currently, usually, of like whatever computer is, desktop, laptop, whatever. And then that concept, which is almost not in language, which kind of blew my mind when I fully accepted this, that points to the actual thing. So that's why you're saying it's 2 layers removed. But once I think that was kind of like that's just the baseline. Everything else comes from there. We're totally accepting that we are talking in symbols. We're talking in cryptic symbols. We are not actually seemingly capable of talking directly about hands on, like interfacing directly. And so once we're like accepting of that, we can still ask though, okay, but is it useful? Is it use which labels are useful? Which labels are actually in service of us? And one might argue that some labels are. Computer is actually so often pretty useful because we can talk about the same thing. Or like, bring me the water bottle.
Right.
Bring for the action I'd like for you to take, me, for you to understand that me is the narrator talking about this one over
Mhm.
here,
Mhm.
and the water bottle, the meaning that one, and then water
Mhm.
bottle. I mean, there's a lot of utility in those labels. Um, but we're still recognizing them as labels. We're still recognizing that we are adding actually a pretty extraordinarily finite limitation on what's actually going on, which is okay. Because if we said you being of 10 trillion whatever atoms of this percentage each with a phenomenon of consciousness, please engage your will to move that thing toward the other thing. And like, it
Which
would
is
be
I
ludicrous.
am.
It's all the one, and it'd be ludicrous. So I think when we talked last night too, I was thinking about, okay, once we get clear on just the baseline, these are concepts. The concepts really aren't even close to capturing the complexity of what's actually going on, particularly with masculine, feminine, polarity, sexuality, attraction, what people find attractive, what sex actually even is, all this stuff. I think it's once we accept these ideas about concepts and meaning making, it's actually it becomes pretty clear to me that obviously masculine and feminine are pretty simplistic compared to how much is actually going on. But we get to ask the question: is it useful? Not just masculine, feminine, but the entire labeling paradigm of polarity, dating, sexuality, etc. Is it useful? And the way that I want to, and again, I actually don't have an immediate answer to that. But what I do have is bringing it back to desire and parts, meaning when we create these ideas like masculine or feminine, when we create the ideas like the way to be masculine is to, all this stuff, the way to be masculine is to be strong. My immediate question is, what is the desire that's motivating the part of us that formed that belief? And to me, the premise I would posit, and I think it's maybe a little too simplistic, but to me, there is a child who comes into the world who starts to initially form certain types of beliefs, such as the way to be loved by women is to be masculine, or the way to be loved is to be masculine. The way to be respected by men is to be masculine, just masculine. That's the way you do it. And then that's one of the many ways, but that's something a child can form that belief. And then on top of that, the belief gets formed of, well, the way to be masculine is X, Y, Z, da, da, da. So now the idea of experiencing love, which is also a definition, but really it seems like in English at least represents like some of like the greatest fruit of life. Like if you don't have this, you're just kind of fucked. That's kind of the underlying belief too, that you need love, when really that's like a complex experience of emotion and thought and meaning
People
making and all
people
this
can
stuff.
confuse all kinds of things that are not love into their definition of love. So you can confuse into your definition that love is pain, love is not real, love is that which doesn't last, all kinds of bullshit. And ultimately, the clearer your definition of the concept is, and the more intentionally that you've actually defined it and you've removed all the confusions from it, the closer to some kind of reality that you get to experience. But you're still not experiencing direct reality, you're still experiencing the definition. So,
Well, some would
yeah.
argue. So
Yeah.
I guess one might actually say you actually are always experiencing direct reality, but you
Fair.
are also experiencing the definition, which sometimes can be muddling.
So this is where it gets into the reason why beliefs are such a core and primary mechanism of consciousness and experience, which is that your perception of your experience is almost indistinguishable from your direct experience itself. So we can say to people, hey, great news, you don't feel like you're not good enough. You feel emotions and sensations in their body. And to them, their direct experience is, you just lied to me. I know that I feel not good enough because of these emotions and sensations in my body. So it's the perception bit caused by the belief and caused by the definition is so close to the projector lens of consciousness that it's almost indiscernible unless you have a very keenly trained eye of awareness, right? So your awareness transcends that projector lens in its order of primacy, closeness to being. The projector lens is still a mechanism that your awareness, through your intention, can control and influence.
Yeah.
Um, so I want to offer that too.
Well, thank you. And on that, you know, it's like um, when it comes to masculine, feminine dating polarity, that that's what I'm saying is why does that even happen in the first place? What is motivating that part of us to even do everything you just said? And I do believe a lot of the time there's like this core. Some people would say that it seems that physical organisms seem to move toward some kind of evolution, propagation. I don't think it's just as simple as just repopulate, but it seems that every organism or species is intending to extend and enhance its existence in some kind of way at the very core. Like that's the core motivating factor. And we can call that, some people call it love, some people call it evolution, some people call it life, some people call it nature, some people call it God. But there does seem to be this phenomenon of some kind of motivating force that moves us beyond the way like a rock would move. And so at the very core, it's like the child comes into the world and that baby's body is growing toward that thing, that peak nirvanic, whatever evolution in life is moving toward. And then we learn that love is the way to have that, or approval or affection or whatever is the critical way to have that. Then we learn again that the way to get that is being masculine or feminine. Then we learn that the way to be masculine and feminine is to be strong, is to, for man, pay the bill, is to whatever. And that if you are not doing these things, you are not that thing. That is the thing that generates love, which is the thing that is absolutely critical for your own reaching of the ultimate.
Yeah,
And
which also means that you're not safe, which also means that other people won't love and respect you because you're not loved. The whole thing, it trails on and on and on.
yeah, and I the reason I bring it back to the desire too is because I think that there's like for me being able to deeply recognize like the motivating factor is like number one, it helps me have more empathy and not be frustrated about it with people. But it also like once I think the desire is recognized and the motivating force, I think it actually unravels the paradigm further for me. Because then it's like, oh well, yeah, that's what it is. I'm so happy I can articulate this, hopefully. Is like we get to ask, well, why? So we know this is a concept. So when asking if it's useful, if we're asking if the entire thing is useful, we have to ask specifically, well, is it useful for what? For what? For getting us what? And if the reason we made it in the first place is to experience more love, more happiness, more peak state, then the actual premise or the argument to be had or the question to be asked is this paradigm and concept actually useful for you as an individual, any person? Is this actually useful specifically for the attainment of the supreme fulfillment of one's desire, which usually comes back, in my opinion, to, for some reason, some kind of feeling of like a certain type of peace and happiness and
Love, yeah.
an embodied um, amp, expansion of that through like children or some kind of project or creation or whatever.
Hmm.
And so that's the question is some of, are these things useful?
So
And to
to
me,
me,
oh, go ahead. Yeah,
okay,
to
cool.
me,
Can I, is it cool if I interject?
yes, please.
Yeah, we both to meet. Okay, so to me, the answer to that question, there's a context that's really important to consider, which is societal belief. So we live in a society where millions and millions and millions of people are believing in these definitions of masculine and feminine. And there's enough coherence in the collective agreement with what those definitions actually mean that we can kind of know it when we see it based on the perception and
Totally.
based on the collective agreement. So if there are women out there who are believing, I want a masculine man. I want a man who will take care of me. I want a man who will support me. I want a man who X, Y, and Z, different traits and characteristics of what it means to be masculine. Then because of their belief system, they're going to automatically filter out other potential dating prospects that don't align with their desire informed by that definition. And so the question to me becomes, what kind of love are we seeking to create and experience with the opposite sex? And my desire is to place as few limitations on that question as humanly possible so
Yes.
that the maximum amount of pure giving and receiving of information and pure giving and receiving of desire and intention without the fear-based limitations of our belief systems getting in the way of that clear communication. That's my desire, is just having a clear dialogue about wants and
What do we,
desires and creations and all these things.
yeah, I really appreciate everything you just said so much because I just so fundamentally agree. And it's so much easier just to ask, what do you actually want? And just
Yeah, yeah,
do that.
yeah.
And when you're working with concepts that are so non-specific as masculine or feminine, like I want a highly feminine woman, it's like, well, what does that actually mean for you? And usually my experience is that we don't actually even know often ourselves, but there's like a deeper understanding of, well, I want this type of experience with a woman. I want, like you said, I want to, like, when seeking a masculine man, I want a man who can take care of me, who is physically strong, who could protect me if needed, keep me safe, who is assertive, honest, who is, not willing to just like give up his values or be a pushover. All these different things that women want, that I think most people want. But when you get really clear and start to just question in turn, like, what does it I actually want? I believe you are more likely to get it than if you go like three layers up into a very like vague concept. But then the way it's even deeper is I think that once we actually start asking, what do I actually want? And we explore our desire and we ask, why do I want it? Why is it that I want this? We can start to connect really, really deeply with some of our core motivating factors and what's actually going on. And my experience is that when I've done this, specifically in my own experience of like, oh, I want this type of girl or woman that is in my life, that is this perfect, divine, feminine partner, all the things that I've worked through. And as I went deeper into what is it I actually want, it's like I want to have a certain type of connection, a certain type of sexual experience, a certain type of all these different things. But even still, just even going one layer, it's already gets confusing. It's like, wait, what is it I actually want? And sometimes we don't actually know. But going one layer deeper to me, it usually reveals pretty quick if there are some limiting beliefs or unintegrated parts, or for lack of a better word, if there is constriction or pain in the emotional body that is motivating the thing. That usually becomes very clear. It's like, oh no, I really want this type of woman, this type of experience, because then I'll finally be able to relax. Because this particular person is going to give me like permission in my male body to be more like at ease, whatever it is. And that's where to me it even boils even deeper to then just being like, okay, like ultimately where I'm landing is I want myself and everyone, just as you said, to really like the question doesn't become how it's so obvious. Like in so many masculine circles, I was part of men's group. It's always like, how can we be more masculine? To me, it's so obvious. The question can instead be like, how can we just have more of what we want? Like,
How
how
can we
can we
be
do
more ourselves?
that?
Yeah.
Boom. That's what I was trying to say. Is
Mhm.
that Just ask, how can I be my fully embodied, expressed, most empowered, most happy, most epic version of myself? Just go straight to that rather than how can I be more divine masculine? How can I be more divine feminine? How can I be more whatever? Instead, just
Yeah.
how can I be what I am here to be?
How can I? So there's such a powerful distinction here. Instead of asking the question, how can I identify myself more and attempt to become something that I am not, which is just a concept, which is just a definition, versus how can I actually fully embody the authentic being that I am? That's a huge, huge, huge distinction. And something that I really want to bring up too is this idea that most people have absolutely no hope of a clue of what the fuck they want. And
Yeah.
that's because there's literally hundreds and thousands of fear-based definitions and beliefs and identities that we've constructed within our psyche, many of which have competing and conflicting wants
Yes.
and desires. So I want to be the one who works 20 hours a day. Fuck that. I want to be the one who works 12 hours a day on my business and hustles and grinds and grows as an entrepreneur. And then there's a little one inside that says, I want to be the one who relaxes and plays video games and watches porn. I want to just relax and do nothing. Well, have fun trying to figure out what it is that you want when both of those forces are competing for your time and attention within you. And for me personally, I this is so powerful. What a great result of being in a romantic partnership. Um, I felt terrified to acknowledge that I wanted anything because I
Mm-hmm.
knew that when I want something, I'm not going to get it. So after a certain point, I just learned to stop wanting anything. And for years as a kid, I didn't want anything on my birthday. I didn't want anything for Christmas. I didn't want anything anymore. And in fact, I didn't even want to want. I don't want to
Yeah.
want.
I don't want to want it. I don't want it.
I
We
don't
talked about
want to
this, right?
want
That
it.
was a
We
thing,
did.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that was the thing.
I
That was
don't
like
want
a
to want it. I don't want to
psytrance,
want to
bro. Yo, I don't want it. Anyway, so all that to just invite some
want it.
compassion for those who are confused about what it is that they want. I've been there, and it isn't until this very recent chapter in my life that I've actually been able to ask myself, what do I want, and get an
Wow.
answer.
My that's so beautiful. I'm happy to hear that because we talked
Yeah,
about this with you specifically. I'm thrilled to hear
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Um, I have a amazing person in my life. His name is Madhu. It's actually my business coach and like other things too. But him and I have talked about it's so obvious. But he said the reason most people don't have what they want is because they are more clear internally about what they don't want than what they do. Meaning, like the clarity of the vision of what it is that you want is less than the vision of what you don't want. Most people are pretty clear what they don't want, actually,
Hmm.
to some degree. You know, there's a very degree. I don't want that. But if you actually start asking, like, we'll push into, and you can feel, it almost feels like there's like a yoga stretch in your brain when you start really getting like, what do I really want? And then why do I want that? And what really do I want it to look like? And usually it's, especially relationships, like I have a general idea what I want them to like look like at a superficial level. And then even when I want the conversations to be like, and they're actually, but I'm accepting that like, anyway, yeah, we often are not fully clear about what we want and trying to bringing that like back to the overall point. Well, slight transition. It was something I like pinned earlier related to all of this. But it's not a total transition. I'm going to speak again. Like once we get clear, okay, I'm now going to live just based on what I want and what I want my life to look like. Going straight to the actual things as opposed to just like I'm gonna be more masculine or I'm gonna be more strong or whatever it is. Instead, like, okay, how do I actually want to live? What do I want to do? Getting clear on that. Then the actual question becomes then, okay, we've accepted these are concepts. We're connecting to what we want. Some might argue that there still are consistencies in the things generally that people with a penis will find stimulate things in their body when people with a vagina do them and when they dress a certain way or act not it's certainly not universal. Everyone has often their own little things
Mhm.
But the question is, it does appear there's some consistencies. It does appear there's certain types of lingerie that, generally speaking, create different little tingles in certain parts of a man's body more than other types of lingerie. Overall, as a general trend, and vice versa. And so the question becomes, is that only because of these beliefs? Or is there something about the quote unquote nature of our bodies or our emotional energies or whatever that actually does have some kind of innate thing? I am very open to the possibility the answer is yes. And there could be some deeper principles that when we say masculine or feminine, kind of like the yin yang or all this different stuff that people go, oh, the whole universe is masculine, feminine, all that. I'm even open to the idea that there actually are some core, quote unquote, fundamental energies, electrons and protons, polarity, positive, negative, attracting, pulling each other in, all this stuff that maybe the human organisms are sometimes playing some of this out. Maybe a lot of concepts. But it does seem like there is some, even look at birds or other things, there's like some things that seem to be consistent in the animal kingdoms of how this all works. Hey, look, it's a cat. Look at that.
Mhm. Meow.
That's crazy, dude. You see that?
Yeah.
We talked
Yeah.
about cats earlier.
Yeah.
I don't feel scared. Like, but
Great.
because I was thinking like, okay, I remember I had this thought a while back that I was like, I do find that when I see a certain kind of person who is a female, that I call a woman, I experience there's a certain uh, percentage of them, of women, that when I see them, I have an experience in my heart, in my dick, whatever's going on. And it's consistent usually. There's a trend of what I find attractive. There's a trend of what most people find attractive of their own personal subset. And when I've thought about what I want, I've realized that what I desire is where I can be in connection with someone who the conversation we've just had totally makes sense. That we're recognizing these are all created in our mind, all of our concepts, and that we can play with it. That then, as we and I talked about, is you become sovereign over the meaning, as opposed to just no, we're just going to throw it all out. That's not even a suggestion, but it's more like just become the master, and then it's like, oh, wow, for whatever reason, this thing that we call masculine or whatever this thing called feminine, we can, so to speak, put that on for tonight and have a great time with it, or and then do something totally different. Or it's like, no, I actually tend to like to wear this uniform. So this is the uniform that I enjoy in our dynamic. Most of my dynamics tend to be that I'm wearing more of the masculine uniform and she's wearing more of the quote unquote feminine uniform, whatever that even means. And that but I want to be able to, we're able to talk about that even in real time sometimes. And at any time, come back to sovereignty, where it's like we are just two consciousnesses, really one, maybe that's a whole non-dual thing, but like
Mhm.
there is something happening here, and we're not bound to these archetypes. We're not bound as slaves to these meanings or beliefs, but we can recognize that and just like a video game, play with it. And so that's kind of, I said that because to me it's not like, I think I have the story that some people might hear this and think that we're just aiming for this like flat, boring, everyone's the same, just be a sovereign consciousness, sex isn't fun,
It's
just love each other, just love each other.
it's
It's
so
like, no,
different from that.
this is
It's not
actually
at all.
hotter in my experience when you're able to level with someone with this stuff and engage sexually. For me, there's so much more freedom. Now it's like we can do whatever we want and we're attracted to each other. How cool is that? That we're not limited in how much we can enjoy each other's bodies however we want, instead of like we have to do it this way.
A belief-pilled relationship to me is fundamentally different than a belief asleep relationship. Because to your point, like, wow, we can actually meet each other in real time in this dialogue. I'm noticing an emotional trigger coming up. And instead of making it you're bad and wrong for making me feel that way, which is a very, I'll just say for lack of a better word, like just low consciousness paradigm. to abdicate your agency and responsibility over your emotions, to project that responsibility out onto other people and create yourself as a victim, which is all an illusion that just lives in your mind. None of it is actually
Low
true.
consciousness not meaning bad, but just meaning a less of an amount of awareness of what's
Of
happening.
awareness. Literally. Yes, you are less conscious. And so the distinction is that when you have a partner that actually has this awareness, when that emotion comes up, because emotion inevitably comes up, something happens, it invokes an old belief, an old part, something happens. And then you can breathe compassion into that awareness and know that, oh, that's a belief that is being activated for you. What would you like in this moment? Would you like sympathy? Would you like support? Would you like to dive in and to explore what belief is causing that? What do you actually want in the moment? And it opens up the possibility for there to be agency in the relationship in every moment. In
Yeah.
every moment, it's a choice. And sex takes on an entirely different connotation because when you strip away, I won't say you, when I stripped away all of my, and I say all, I acknowledge that I
Yeah.
likely have more layers, right?
Yeah.
All in my present field of awareness, layers of sexual shame. I
Mm.
found that I started loving to eat pussy. I found that I
Great.
started enjoying sex a lot more. I, it fundamentally changes. And the sex that I was having, I wasn't constantly imagining a specific outcome, and that belief system and drive was hooking my attention and bringing me out of the
You
present
just said it's
moment.
so powerful.
Hmm.
Whoa.
What do you see?
Just a couple thoughts I want to like come out really quick, but like the
Hmm.
first one is just what you said about being attached to this certain way of things looking instead of being open to the
Yeah,
delight it's had. And it comes
yeah,
back to that idea of desire. It's like another angle that's not, it's not contrary, but it's like it's really good to be clear on what you desire, but also remain extraordinarily open that what reality has in store for you may be so far more delightful than what you're believing you could possibly conceptualize. And that's what I was thinking when it comes to sex is like living in the present moment. Like this is just happening, as opposed to like this is what we're gonna make happen. Now, if you feel that this is what we're gonna make happen, and that's what's happening, that can be super hot too.
yeah.
But it's just like if you're sovereign over it.
Right.
But I was just the reason I was excited is just specifically when you just said the component of allowing the thing to unfold
Yeah,
and letting it be incredible instead of like an attachment to like it has to be this kind of way. I think that happens a lot with masculine and feminine stuff. Like I've personally engaged in
yeah,
moments with people where I feel like it was more of just we're just having this experience. And there might be certain energies between I, or whatever it is, that one might call more masculine or feminine by that paradigm. There's other times where it's more non-dual and more like androgynous. But I've had experiences as well where there was more of this pressure, where I was like, I was going to talk about it after even sometimes, where I felt like I could experience through my own meaning making, by the way, I'll own that. But I was experiencing, in some sense, this, I don't know if desire is the right word, but some kind of attachment that I show up as a certain type of archetype that in her mind equals masculine. And that if I
mm,
don't do that, something about this experience isn't it. And you can, and there's something, and I've had that. I've been feeling that way with women, not just sexually, even in conversations. When I was like really deep in the masculine feminine paradigm, I would have the story of like, oh, she must be so disconnected from her femininity because she's not acting the way that I want.
mm. Yeah. So projecting that on, yeah, I see. I
And
see.
it's like, well, if you want to respond, I have something else that I want to share about that too. But
I'll briefly share the example that comes to mind is I had a partner in the past who wanted to step out of her masculine and step into her feminine. And to
mm,
her, that partially meant that she could basically no longer ask for and direct towards what she wants. She had it that that meant that she had to wait for the other person to lead and take initiative. And
yeah,
so she stopped experiencing what she wanted. as a result of not asking for it and creating it. So the
Mm.
definition of masculine and feminine, because I have to step out of my masculine and the masculine is the one who leads and initiates, that means that if I step into my feminine,
Oh,
I can no longer lead and initiate. And the strategy that I
so
learned to get what I want is to lead and initiate, because that's a fucking effective strategy to get what you want, is to initiate it in the world. Who would have thought? And so when she stopped doing that, she became really discontent with her experience. And it's all based on the definition. None of it was
literally just
real.
based on that. It's not what's
Yeah.
actually going on because I think if we were going to get down to the fundamentals of what actually is the phenomenon people are observing, as far as I can tell, everyone has the capacity to initiate action to get what they want. Everyone has the capacity to rest and not initiating action to, for like, receive from
Yes.
others. Everyone has that.
Mhm.
And for me, to get into the nitty gritty specific of like, if there is a thing called masculine and feminine, what I think people are observing a lot of the time, and what I should say is what I take delight in,
Mhm.
is that in a fully embodied, relaxed state of like all energy flowing in the body without constriction, where I would say there's a lot of love and happiness and joy, etc., flowing. That has a certain, you could say, emotional vibrational frequency, right? There's like, this is the thing. It's like, and it seems that in every single person, it's unique. Like everyone when they're in that, it's slightly different. And in people with a vagina, it seems like some people would say there's like a somewhat of a categorical vibrational hum. There's people who have penises are in like its own category of like a vibrational hum when fully embodied. I'm open to even that being too much of a line drawing, but I think in general, I experience that. I do experience that. And so for me, it's more about that. Like what I find attractive from a quote unquote polarity perspective is it's much more about the particular vibrational frequency that many people would point to and say feminine. I find that particular vibrational frequency highly enticing and attractive. But this is really cool getting definitions again. This is where I think of meaning making. The reason things often get fucking cumfuddled, oh, that's a word, but fucked up, is when we have like 10 different definitions for the same thing. We're using the same word to define different things. So if we're using feminine to describe just that vibrational frequency, it's like, oh, I'm attracted to a certain like emotional frequency. It's called feminine sometimes.
Mm-mm. Cut out.
Taking action is more masculine. Like you said, I'm stepping into my masculine when I'm. Oh, can you hear me?
It cut out for a good 10 seconds.
Oh, okay. One moment.
Yeah.
Okay, now it's getting better. I just switched it again, so we're good. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I just said that there's the vibrational frequency that is this thing that some people point to and say feminine.
Mhm.
But then, oh, and other people say feminine, and they're saying all those things. This is what you can do. This is what you can't do. Feminine means this. Feminine means not initiating. Feminine means waiting. Feminine means being passive, which, by the way, I don't want to sound like a social justice warrior. People like alienate me for it, but like, I'm pretty freaking convinced that the idea that feminine is passive is a fundamentally a deeply oppressive, like
Yeah. It's
patriarchal
retarded.
belief
Yeah.
system. And then when women are saying equality looks like I'm going to step into my masculine and build my business, and it's like, whoever said that you can't be feminine and build a business, which all that said, feminine is even a concept. But like when, to me, I even hear women who feel empowered saying, I'm being more masculine. It's like, and that's like a man. And I'm kind of going all over the place. So just to tie it all back together, what I was really getting at is that we don't have to have package deals. You can just be
No.
attracted to the vibrational frequency of a petite woman or whatever kind of woman you're into, right? Like all these different, like like for me, that's my personal type. It's a very specific, like what I'm usually most into. And there's a very specific vibrational cutesy frequency. And I can just be attracted to that. And maybe sometimes I can call it feminine. But if I have the meaning and beliefs in my mind that that's incompatible with her being like a badass who gets what she wants in life, or her being like someone that doesn't need me to save her to be able to be happy, or her who's someone who doesn't feel safe unless I act a certain way according to like this predefined, it's all different things. But if we have those confused, if I have this vibrational frequency only comes with all of these traits, it might become very difficult for me to actually even know what I'm attracted to. Because I'm like, oh, I'm attracted to her, but she like
Not
is a
only that,
businesswoman, but I want to be the one that makes more money. And like this is confusing.
and there's all the conflict and confusion that comes with that. And like even beyond that, when you confuse what you want with the definition, you limit your experience of what you want to the definition that you're believing in. So, what does that mean? It means that if you say that you want a feminine woman and you have it that a feminine woman is passive and a feminine woman is this, and then you also deeper down, when you strip away all your bullshit, you really truly want a woman who fully embodies her true authentic self and who knows herself and who loves herself fully and unapologetically and who expresses
Yeah.
her creativity and her gifts in the world freely. Maybe that's something more close to what you, so to speak, truly want. Well, good luck experiencing that when you impose a self-created limitation called I want her to be feminine. I want her to be this, instead of getting clear on what are the actual traits and characteristics that I want her to embody and being really clear and specific on what those things mean. If you just say, yeah, she's gonna be in her feminine. The fuck is in her feminine mean? What is it? Show me someone who's out of anything or in it's all make believe nonsense, and it all just serves as a barrier of clear perception of your desire and your intentions.
Yeah. And in this moment, I'm like called back to the like the core of for me of like again like what do we actually desire? And when you said that, I was like, I really desire for everyone on earth to just be their fully embodied, most expressed, most healthy, happy version of themselves. And that might look like in certain contexts what people traditionally call masculine or feminine. And in other contexts, it might not look it at all. But it's
Hmm.
like I want it to the point that I'm not even here to say what I think your most expressed self looks like. That's not my job. I can have my story of what that looks like, and I can be supportive of like that, or I can encourage that. But I really just want for everyone, including myself, to just experience the peak of what they can experience, whatever their own personal peak is. I want everyone to have their authentic, undistorted desires fulfilled. Undistorted meaning undistorted by limitation of belief.
Yeah.
Their true, authentic, free flowing desire energy. That's what I want to be embodied in all people. And I am willing to pose the argument that that is not always in language. And so the desire for being or having more masculine in the life, there's a deeper desire always in my experience. Most things there's a deeper desire. And yeah, I think we're I love it. I'm curious what else is live for
Yeah.
you. I'm talking a
Yeah.
little bit. I think
The
we'll wrap it around an hour, but I'm curious.
we'll wrap soon here, and
We can have some beautiful bows tied on this. I feel like we
what
barely
this
scratched the surface, but
we got a lot of foundation work laid though for maybe another conversation. So for me, what still feels alive is this idea that most people don't really know what they want, and a huge component of that is we're so thoroughly conditioned from childhood through school, through church, through community, through everything to take on a whole bunch of ideas and beliefs about what someone should want in a partner, in a girlfriend, in a boyfriend, in a relationship, in a marriage, in a wife and a husband. And every single one of those words is tied to an entire belief system, a matrix of ideas and definitions of what the thing should be. And the idea of what a wife looks like is going to be heavily informed by your experience when you're 3 looking at your mom, and you have no idea what shit is confused in that concept of wife until you intentionally explore it. We have no idea what shit's confused in the definition of relationship. Well, when I'm in a relationship, I can't talk to other girls. When I'm in a relationship, I need to give her all of my care and attention. When I'm in a relationship, I need to tell her no so that she doesn't monkey branch swing red pill to the higher value man. All kinds of different belief systems get
I'm
confused into this shit. And it's no wonder that we don't know what the
not a
fuck that
total
we want.
dick. She's gonna go to a higher value man.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It's
Um,
so
well,
just quickly to wrap the thought, it's the conditioning is not what you truly want, and it's never been what you truly want. Your authentic desire comes from a place that transcends societal conditioning and programming and belief systems. It comes from a really deep place within you that, like you said, isn't necessarily tied to words. It's like an intention. And the intention has something to do with radical self expression and evolution and love and peace, and it has a lot more to do with the authentic core resonance that is you expanding in the universe. There's all kinds of philosophical stuff about why that is. That's what God is infinite expansion, and so you're a unique manifestation of that, so you have that same impulse. I don't know what's true there, but
neither.
ultimately the point is just most of what we think that we want, we don't really want. And those are just beliefs and ideas that were fed to us as kids. And it's our responsibility to question those beliefs and look and see the truth that the the stories that we're fed aren't really truly what we want.
That's really potent to think of. Yeah, like we have beliefs about what we desire, which is different than the feeling of the actual desire,
Yes.
which is more of an impulse than anything. It's like a baby walking. That's desire. That's what I would call desire, like authentic desire. It just
Yeah.
moves toward the outcome.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
um, that's thank you for sharing all that. I feel lit up. I feel there was one other thing you said that I wanted to like comment on, but I didn't know if it'd be like a whole other tangent. It was pretty like there was so much we could go on here, but I think I
Yeah.
actually do want to share this because some of the things that prompted this for me in the beginning is like when it comes to what we think we want in the opposite partner, how much that does relate to the desires that we had of usually of our parents, usually the opposite gendered parent, that they did not fulfill. And
Hmm.
so I have observed different people over the years post things on the internet. And then I have a story about what's going on in their world. And the story that I've had when I've seen some things is I've seen, and I have compassion with this, but I've seen there be, this is a good way for me to end, at least where I'm landing at, is like, I've seen certain women post something like, men, stop doing XYZ, or men, do this more for whatever it is. And then it's usually some like traditional masculine archetype. I want you to do more of this thing because that's what I want. Or I've seen men do the same thing. I think men are a little more afraid to do that publicly because of like canceling or whatever, but I think both people are doing it all the time internally. And the story I have about that, which I think may be true, is that there are times that we grow up and we have a desire for mom and dad to treat us a certain way or to act a certain way with us. And sometimes they don't do those things and they don't fulfill our desires. And then there's a part of us that experiences some kind of pain because we gave meaning to that. And now there's this pain in our body. We grow up, now we're an adult. And throughout that journey of growing up, parts of us have taken on all these beliefs of like, this is what a masculine man is. And often not always, often, I think that if people go deep enough, if they have a particular craving, like a really potent craving for a masculine man or a particularly feminine woman, my encouragement to anyone is they really feel that depth of it. I believe that if they go deep enough, they will find there was a part of them that craved a certain type of energy or behavior from the parent of the opposite gender that they did not receive. And that they are like, that there's a feeling of some kind of deficit. And that there is, and that ultimately underneath even like specific beliefs, there is this desire for some kind of energetic emotional experience, and that they concluded through belief systems that having a masculine man, or having a man who makes XYZ money, or having a man who is whatever, that is going to, at the deep subconscious somatic bodily level, that's going to generate that vibration and that emotional feeling. And it appears to be the case, considering how many relationships don't work out for people. It appears to be the case that that whole route isn't actually a very fruitful method or a very fruitful way to produce the vibrational emotional experience that you want. And it seems like we can spend our entire life pursuing relationships that, if we were to come back into our true self, we'd be like, this is so misaligned in so many ways, but they just have this certain little vibration that we think is going to help. And so that was the thing I just wanted to land on, is at the deepest, most emotional levels, I do believe that we all want to experience a sense of internal unity and a sense of internal peace and harmony with others. And my belief is that just going straight to how we can create that in ourselves is a simply more fast, easy, and effective way to experience that than trying to go into any relationship and getting it from anybody else. Whether that's more masculine in my life, whether that's more feminine, even if it's more love, whatever it is, it's probably going to be faster, easier, and more long lasting to figure out how to generate it with myself. And then every relationship from there, now it's not even important who's masculine and feminine, because we're just embodied sovereign. The word that comes to mind is adults. We are adults, and we can be like, I respect you as an adult, and we're adults, and you are, even if you're in a female body, completely sovereign, and you see me as completely sovereign. And that to me is the kind of relating that is pretty dope. So that's where I'm
Thank
landing.
you. Thank you. I appreciate all that, and I'll land my plane as well. Life to me is a grand make-believe adventure, and you can make up any bullshit that you want to believe in for fun, or you can accept the bullshit that other people made up that doesn't serve you or doesn't align with what you want, and it's really painful. And I've experienced a lot of that in romantic relationships, and I no longer settle for that because I'm a sovereign mind. And like I don't have any interest in um playing and pretending that that we're not each fully responsible for creating our own lives and creating the life that aligns with what we desire and what we value deep down inside. And when we operate from that core premise, then everything in the relationship goes immeasurably better indefinitely, because we're both completely responsible for our own creation of reality. And we're both responsible, therefore, for the co creation of a shared reality with each other. The best way to maintain a harmonious shared co creation is to maintain harmonious, ongoing, honest communication. And when your communication isn't stymied and limited by old beliefs and identities and definitions that you didn't even really consciously choose when you were 9 years old and observing your parents behaving to take on in the first place, but it's still there, We now have the invitation to consciously choose to undo and unlearn those stories and those programs. And when we do, we get to enjoy the deepest amount of peace and love and presence and expansion into new possibilities that we didn't even imagine previously were possible because our imagination was only limited to what we could perceive and believe. So, dropping the story, dropping the definition of what it means to be in a partnership, be in a relationship, and creating these things from scratch is a responsibility. It takes some degree of effort and intention, but when you go through that, the reward on the other side of it is more beautiful than we can ever possibly describe in words,
Oh,
because it's true love without limit, and that's what I stand for.
it's freedom. It's
Yeah,
actual freedom and love.
yeah,
Thank you so much. I love this conversation. Everything.
me
This is
too.
awesome.
That's great. Send you the
Thanks
recording.
everyone who ever listened.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
we
do
love
the
you.
old like straight up. Anyone who's listening to this, please, if you have thoughts, comment. I would love to engage in dialogue. Like, I don't know
Yeah,
where we're going to post this, but this is one of my favorite topics. I'd love
yeah.
to hear people's thoughts, disagreements, additional layers. There's always more to learn. And this is a dialogue I love to have. So,
Mhm.
anyone who chose to watch through this, for real, really curious about your own opinion on everything that was said today.
Yeah, love you. All right, ending the recording here.
Hit that button.